November 25, 2019 McCracken County Fiscal Court meeting. And Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bartleman.
Here.
Commissioner Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Parker.
Here.
Judge Clymer.
Here. Commissioner Bartleman, you offer our prayer, please.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the blessings of this day. We ask you to be with us as we make decisions that affect this county, Father, and just give us the guidance and direction we need to be better help their lives and the things they do in this county. Pray for our first responders that perform important services to this county. Be with them, give them safe travel as they perform their duties, and give them the safety they need. We pray also for their families as they also dedicate themselves to the work that their spouses do. Father, it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I wanted to, before we got into the agenda, just notice in the prayer bill you offered out thanks for our first responders. Of course, we've got a top-notch sheriff's office that operates day in, day out. I wanted to bring to attention our EMS department Friday evening responded first at about 6:30 in the evening to a mission on the Ohio River, a houseboat there occupied by a man with multiple sclerosis, and his dog needed medical attention. The man did, and they responded along with, I think it was Paducah Police Department and Mercy Regional EMS and the Paducah Fire Marshal, Paducah Fire Department. They towed his boat, found him near Brookport Bridge, towed him down to the city transient boat dock and got him medical help, and so that all came out good where it could have been quite bad. About the same time they got done with that, they had the Dippin' Dots explosion call. EMS responded to that, I think, along with our Sheriff's Department and Paducah Fire Marshal, Paducah Fire Department. Had 4 injuries out there. They opened up the EMS headquarters out there to provide a safe place for the employees that were present to go and get away from the building there where the explosion had occurred, and that's ongoing. But again, we repeatedly recognize the value of our EMS folks, the majority of which, other than leadership positions, are entirely volunteer, like our fire department folks, with very few exceptions, are volunteers. So I just think we need to frequently recognize them for their efforts of taking away time from their families and what they're doing to go and respond for. In this case, this fellow from out on the river was not one of our folks, but he was in our community, so we assisted him, and then the Dippin' Dots thing as well. We have on the agenda as item 7 a first reading of an ordinance concerning the mechanism by which to fund the 911 system that we're trying to get upgraded. I sent you all an email saying that we had, and we've got some more issues, a little more research, I think, to do on finishing out. Is this the way we want to go? What are the technicalities? Making sure that we're going to get this done right. I think that we need to pass on that until we get the information and know that we're on solid ground of how to finance, how to pay for the 911 system. I'd like to see if there would be a motion to remove item 7 the first reading of that ordinance until we can decide that we are where we need to be on that, and then put it on probably the next.
So move we pass over item number 7 on the agenda. Ordinances.
Second.
Number A.
Number A, which, yeah, 7A, right. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, we'll get that back on the agenda probably next meeting then.
Judge, I'd like us, when we look at this too, to look at all the other options too. One option that was not discussed is the option of a parcel tax. I know we're looking at the ad valorem tax now, but I think we also need to look at the pros and cons of the parcel tax.
Yeah, we're going to put it all on, see, that's another viable option.
Okay, and that we have an option when we approve that as to which way we want to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then the consent agenda, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So made.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Anything, no, I didn't ask anything, we need to move off the consent agenda?
No.
I guess not. All right, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, that carries. Budget transfers,
It is ordered that the necessary cash transfers in the amount of $771,000 be made in order to pay county bills and payroll approved November 25th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That carries. Accounts payable,
It is ordered to approve the vouchers claims register from November 13th, 2019 to November 25th, 2019 to show county bills in the amount of $284,149.98 were paid.
what'd you say, 284, 194?
284, 149,
149,
98.
98, all right.
So made.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, aye. Opposed, no. That carries. All right, and then we've got on for item 4, a discussion, don't expect to take any action, but just discussion on Human Resources Department. I've been discussing with Deputy Judge Doolittle and others these duties that generally fall under a Human Resources Department are currently and have been for some time performed by our treasurer, Pam. Pam is, I don't know what she'd say about it, but I know, and Steve Doolittle knows, she's extremely overworked. I don't remember the number of hours, cumulative time was in the 400 range. So we put, I don't know, did y'all get we made a insert, but didn't get it to you. There it is. We've been, Steve and I both have been kind of running ragged today, so we got this printed up, or Steve did. That second page there, why is this needed? The large organization, we've got 235 employees, a substantial number of turnover. No one person's responsible for HR. The offices handle those within their own office, but the county in general is responsible for what's done in those offices. It's certainly distracting from financial management. It really is with our budget and as much as going on in this county. I think we owe it at least a very serious consideration of hiring a human resources person so that Pam would not be distracted from her financial duties. I don't deal with financial things. My wife handles that, but perhaps y'all do. But I know that it's difficult to be interrupted when you're dealing with serious and high numbers of income, resources, various things, the record keeping paperwork that has to be done. And so I wanted us to have some discussion about that. We are very low on revenue at this time, but we're generating some. It's just I see Pam come to work. I don't see her come to work. She's here before I am. When I get here, she's here. I get here usually 8:30 in that range. When I leave, she's still here. We have to drive her off, and she says, I can't leave. I still got this to do. And so she's exceptionally talented, very trustworthy, very driven, very motivated. But I told Steve a while ago, I would not be surprised if she were to decide, hey, I can't work all these hours. It's just far too demanding, and I'm afraid somebody will recognize what we have in Pam and come along and offer her a job where she only works 40 hours instead of 70 or 80 a week, and off she goes, and it'd be a huge loss. But I thought it essential that we just put it on and discuss, get your guys' thoughts on it, and Steve may have some information about that as well. And just there on page 3, you see that HR duties, recruiting and hiring policy and procedures, risk management, workers' comp, benefits administration. Any of those 5 are very important, but the risk management, workers' comp, those areas in particular, they require a lot of attention. If you get that wrong on risk management or workers' comp, dealing with those things, it can cost the county greatly in righting that wrong that's done. So, open up, y'all, whatever you.
I've been proponent about it. I mean, I've told you a couple of times I've noticed how much she's tied up and how hard she's working. So I think this is a step in the right direction with 235 employees.
I don't think there's any doubt that the treasurer needs assistance in there. And I think we've moved in the last few months to centralize, Steve, am I correct? We've moved in the last few months to centralize record keeping of days off and time off and stuff. Before, each individual department kept it in their own method, I guess. And we had no centralized, uniform way of keeping track of that, and that takes time to do that right too, on time off and sick days and things like that. And if we have a HR department, how much would they be involved in hiring? Because right now, the jailer, the sheriff, the clerk, which is the majority, the bulk of the employees, they do their own hiring. Would they continue to do that, or they would continue to do that? But we still have all the record keeping involved in that. I agree. And could this be a multi-function position that helps with human resources, but also helps alleviate some of the other burden that exists in the financial office?
Virtually, these 5 things I listed are what Pam and some others are tasked with doing. Our goal here isn't just human resource management, it's to improve our financial management. We've seen over the last 3 audits a number of comments, and we're going to mop that stuff up and address that, but that's going to take additional attention from Pam so that our financial administration improves. I mean, we clearly and obviously have a need in human resources, but it's really a 2-for-1 by taking the majority of this burden off of Pam and tasking it with a single person frees up more of those valuable hours that she has to work on financial administration.
I don't think there's any doubt that help is needed there, and I've always thought that doing human resources in the way we've done it probably has not been efficient, and in a lot of ways it's probably cost us more money because we didn't control overtime. A human resources director could look at overtime, comp time, and, because, I mean, we've had some employees, I think we've changed policy, but we had one employee left here that we owed them a year of comp time, and it cost the county a lot of money, and there were a lot of questions about that. But it would help manage those kinds of things, and in the long run, probably save money.
We have a risk management and workers' comp issue that needs to be addressed, and it's going to take some good management to do that. And the only way to really address that is someone who is getting their hands dirty with it every day. So I am certain that we would recover a significant part of this cost just by managing our risk exposure we have with the CAECO All Lines Fund and with workers' comp.
I'm surprised to see here that we have no human resources software. I thought we
do not.
We had something. And is to
We have
start out
payroll,
with.
we have payroll software, but no HR software.
To start out with, could this be, could we get a third party to help with this to start out with and eventually hire our own person? Would that be less expensive? Or are we better off just hiring our own person?
I think we're better off just hiring our own person,
How much?
attacking our problems. You know, the five that we laid out here are the critical ones that need lots of attention.
Do you have a salary estimate of what this position would be?
I don't think we'll be in the $45,000 to $55,000 range. I think that's what the market for HR generalists are around here.
Similar counties our size have a position like this?
Yes. I would be surprised if we could find a county bigger than us that didn't do this, and a number of smaller ones that do.
And I think it's important that be recognized that the agencies, the constitutional officers, other agencies would be able to do their own selection of who they wanted. Like you're saying, we're not going to start saying, hey, sheriff or jailer, we want you to hire this person, or we don't want that person. It's just, and it would be able to take some burden off of those offices by providing a centralized and so consistent method of following all the HR requirements and that sort of thing.
I think it's a good idea. And then once if the clerk recommended that a certain person be hired, then we can have a uniform way of doing background checks and
Drug testing.
Testing and all that.
Background,
I don't know.
yes, all that
I don't know if
stuff.
that's all uniform now.
No, it is not. It
And I think
varies
that would
from
be
department to
a big
department.
benefit too.
That would help you guys out quite a bit, wouldn't it, David, on stuff like that, Matt?
Doing the background checks and that sort of thing? Not necessarily, it's a requirement for me or less different than what Matt's office are. I mean, it really boils down to our discretion as to whether we hire them or whether we don't. Somebody who's not involved in the jail, I don't know what they do.
And we need to make sure everybody's on board with it. We have cooperation with it if we do that, but I think we do need to do it.
Well, I guess we will probably, if there's not any more discussion, do you want to make a motion that we proceed with drafting a ordinance, and we can make some determination, Steve D or Steve E, what our requirements would be, our qualifications, and come back with a ordinance next meeting and try to get something going.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Second on that?
I'll say.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, get that done.
I think CAECO can help on some background information too, on how many counties have them and how their duties work. And what the salaries are. They've done some studies recently to compare salaries among counties, so that might help with some just background on it.
All right, and then on old business, previously tabled items under 5A, is the ordinance that we've been dealing with here for a bit. It's ordered that the judge executive is authorized to enter into a service agreement with Greater Paducah Economic Development to pay the amount of $250,000 to GPED for fiscal year 2019-20. So that service agreement would add the, I was surprised that, and I guess you know, Eddie and Bill and Jeff, this agreement we've had with GPED's really just been from historically we've paid them whatever we paid them, and recently it's been $250,000 to handle our economic development. We're the elected folks, but we transfer that duty to them to do that for us, and we pay them that money. But there is no contract, there is no service agreement. That's awful loose. And so we have been talking about the service agreement where we lay out in general what they'll do for us, what their duties are, what our duties are, etc. And of course, then following next is to pay the quarterly payment of $62.5. And so there's been some discussion about wanting more requirements in the service agreement than what was originally drawn up. The city has a fairly basic service agreement with them, and so we've got this on for possible ordinance today. Is there a motion, at least for discussion purposes?
I make a motion for discussion purposes.
All right.
No second.
Second.
For discussion.
All right. Discussion.
I yield.
First off,
You go first.
yeah, let me say that I think the GPED has gone a long way in the last year to do some reorganization that probably needed to be done. I think it was important that that was done. I think they recognized concerns about things that went on in the past that I think we've been shared some of those same concerns. I think it's better. It's going to be more efficiently operated with a smaller board. It was, I think, 26 or 27 voting board members with an executive committee, and it's been reduced, I think, to 10 board members. I think that was a good move. My concern is that the taxpayers of McCracken County depend on the elected officials. I think one of our main duties is to help create jobs in the community. And I've been on the fiscal court for almost 5 years now, and I think over those 5 years we have given GPED about $1.2 to $1.3 million. And again, this is not the current board, but in the past 4 years I would have a hard time explaining the benefits of that investment. I know it's paying some loans from some previous jobs that were created, but I have concerns about that. I agree with Commissioner Jones, and we've had discussions on that we need to have a member of the county commission, a fiscal court, a county commissioner, join that board so that we have 2 representatives, the judge and the county commissioner. I don't think there would be any harm. I don't know what the negative would be to have another voice on there from those who are elected by the citizens of McCracken County to make those decisions. I think it would help improve accountability. I think it would help have another voice on there, that if there's a issue that there's concern about, that they can raise a red flag to discuss those issues. I think we all come from different perspectives in the community. We have business people, we have elected officials, and even among the elected officials we have different perspectives that we look at things. And I think it's important that we boost what the GPED's doing by having a commissioner on there to add to the discussion, to have input, and to help increase and expand accountability and visibility. I just think that's really important for us to have the opportunity to have whatever voice we can. And again, it's probably the largest amount of money that we give to a non-government agency, $250,000 a year. I disagreed with Commissioner Jones and his proposal last month to give them another $50,000 if they put a commissioner on there for a total of $300,000. I really don't favor that, because if we put a commissioner on there that they didn't like, they could say, never mind, we don't want the $50,000, and then that commissioner would be gone from there. And I think that would create more problems than what it would solve. And again, this is not a reflection on the current board. It's not a reflection on what they want to do and their goals for the coming years. It's just to help them achieve what we all want to achieve, and that's job creation in McCracken County.
Yeah, so first of all, I guess I want to say that you know, paper kind of reported that this was a bit of a rift. This is not it's not a rift, I don't think, between us. It's not a rift between GPED. I'm not taking this position because I'm upset with GPED. I take the position that more public voice needs to be involved in GPED, because in proportion to the public money, I believe that more public voice is appropriate. For example, the public money that goes into GPED is $500,000 from their last budget. The private investment was $454,000. The present board is 10. I think it's worth noting that when we were campaigning a little more than a year ago, the issue came up several times that we felt the business model of GPED needed to be changed. As you said, it had a very large board of 2 public officials and about 26 different individuals. In response to that campaign and those issues, GPED did reduce its board and now has a 10 board member, 8 members which are elected from an election process that is still kind of evolving, and 2 members of the public voice, public officials. Our proposal, yes, Commissioner Bartleman and I's proposal, I don't know if you'll be with us or not, but I think you are in favor of it, is that we increase that board to 12, and that 1 county commissioner and 1 city commissioner join the GPED. And so we've kind of worded that into a revised contract that we'd like to proffer to GPED. I think it's important to remember from GPED's perspective is that we'll start hearing campaigns this spring. And if we go back to what we all wrote in the paper and what we said and what's your number 1 priority, almost every commissioner says economic development is one of the number 1 things. But what happens is when you get the job, you realize that what your involvement is you get to do a thumbs up or a thumbs down on basically the $250,000. I think the public would feel better about GPED if there were more public voice, and I believe the public officials have something to offer. What are the downsides? Well, the downside, I guess, is that we may elect, or maybe we already have elected, a dumb commissioner who gets put on GPED. And to that response, I would say, well, that's just the cost of democracy. If we're going to fund something with public money, and largely with public money, then I think it makes sense to have the public voice. As Commissioner Bartleman said, I'm not in any way, I don't want this to be reported that I'm somehow not in favor of funding GPED. Quite the opposite. I'm interested in increasing the funding of GPED. I think that I'm interested in that in part because it's so important. And one of the things that I think that doesn't get realized in this discussion is other counties employ their own economic developer, and they work directly for the county judge executive and the fiscal court. We give up that right in order to be in this partnership. So we see that there's a reason for us to forbear that activity so that we're not out creating havoc by having 2 two folks or two departments doing that. But that, I think, even makes it more important. If we give up both the public money and we forbear the right to have some management control and interest in the economic development mission, I think it's even more important that we have that public voice. So I just can't say, again, that this is not the result of a conflict. This is not in any way indicative that we're somehow disappointed with the board or in any way disappointed with Bruce or Heather or Nora. That's not it. This is just a policy issue for me, and so we brought a revised agreement, but I don't want to get. I don't want. If you got something you want.
I did always. There's no rift between us and GPED, and we want to see GPED be very successful. And whatever we can do to help, we want to help. I would actually like to talk to, maybe sit down with them and get this behind us meet with GPED.
So paying 50 or not paying 50?
I have to agree with Commissioner Bartleman. I think 250,000 is plenty. I mean, I don't think we pay another 50,000.
I think under a draft proposal that we're prepared to present tonight, it does not increase funding. It keeps it at 250. And I think this is a good time to pursue this effort to put a commissioner on there, because they've done a reorganization and it's in the infancy of the reorganization. This would be a good time to put commissioners on there. And it would not, if we try to do it a year or two from now, it might cause some disruption. But we put it on there now, and I think it worked very positive. And I agree with, and I mentioned before, and I agree with Commissioner Jones, this isn't a controversy. It's not a rift. Whenever I've called to get information, I talked to Bruce today for some information that he readily provided. He's very open in that. And I just think it'd be good to have that voice on the board when they're in there debating different things, that voice is there. And it's not a reflection of the judge either. The judge is going to be very outspoken, and I think he will be a good public representative on the board. But I think this needs to be done to ensure that the future has representation on there. I think there could be some questions raised about how vocal mayors and judges were in the long past history of this when things came up. So I just think it's important that we do this and do it now, and I hope we can approve the draft resolution or the draft agreement we have, present it to GPED, and if they agree to it, then we'll come back and approve the funding for them.
Where'd this draft resolution come from?
It's one that I think it was distributed over the weekend that Commissioner Jones can explain the changes from the original one we got from GPED.
Bill and I met Saturday, and agreed upon a revision. I think we emailed it to everybody. So it's our work. It does include a section 9 called Transparency and Community Reports, which would put something in place that I think GPED has already promised to start doing, and that is in between the time of the invoice and the payment that they will appear and give a community report of both successful efforts and unsuccessful efforts, so that we can share, all of the community share in reports about its economy, because it's the community's economy. I brought extra copies.
The transparency would include that they would have to present a budget to us at the start of prior to the start of their year, and then give us quarterly reports on financial condition of how they spending is related to the budget, and then also, as Commissioner Jones said, give a public accounting of success and failure. And this recognizes that some of their work has to be confidential. They can't identify names of businesses, but they can give enough information to ensure the public that they're, and that's the reason for them having to come to the fiscal court, that it would be a public forum for them to talk about their successes and their challenges. And then sometimes talking about those things publicly can help them overcome those challenges they face.
Well, anything else? I'm very much opposed to it. I think that, well, I know that a local government, this body, is designed, the focus, the intent of this body is to speak with one voice. And that's why we vote on things. And when we decide an issue, whether I'm for it or I'm against it, or as long as it takes three of us to decide what that voice is, and it sounds like it's about to be that voice would be, we going to tell GPED we want a position on, and an extra position, a commissioner on the board. I've made it clear that I would provide, and I've been attempting to provide as much information as I could as the fiscal court member on the board. The idea that there would be another voice or more voice on the board is somewhat in conflict, I think, with the fact that this body speaks with one voice. And we talk about there is no downside. The downside is, what if I go to the GPED and say, here's what I want, and the commissioner representative says, well, here's what I want. And it's different from what I want. Two conflicting voices. What do we do then? That is contrary to the design and foundation, really, of this body. That's the main thing. Another thing is that I don't believe that there'll be any more voice on GPED with two than there is with one. We will vote, we will discuss, we'll determine what we want, and as a member of that board, I go to them and tell them, here's what we want. And when I speak with $250,000 behind my voice, it gets things done. And if it's me and Bill, or if it's me and Commissioner Jones, or me and Commissioner Jones, well, here Commissioner Jones, and Commissioner Parker, and I don't know who you have in mind would be this person, and don't really care, but or Commissioner Bartleman. When we go to them and we say, Clymer says, hey, we want to do this, how much does it add that the commissioner says, yeah, I want that too? I think nothing. And I don't know where exactly we are on the 50. Sounds like the 50,000 maybe. I don't even know if we could get to a majority here on this, but I do think the idea of paying them 50,000 more for a second voice, that I believe would be totally ineffective. That the one voice carries the day, and I'm not saying because it's my voice, I'm saying it's because this body's voice, and this body pays them $250,000 a year. You've got the city would get a seat too. I don't know that the city wants a seat. So I guess what is being proposed is that, and I suppose the hammer, we didn't talk about that, but it's the hammer that if they don't agree to this proposal, that a commissioner is on the board as well, we don't pay them their money, or do we just get ruffled up, or what do we do? What if, and they are on a board. It's not Clint Anderson. It's not Bruce Wilcox. So they would need 6 votes to say, okay, we're going to put another commissioner on the board. What if they don't? What if they say, no, we're not going to do that? Are we then going to no longer fund GPED?
Well, I can speak for me. I would not be in favor of pulling out of GPED, but I'm still in favor of having this conversation. And obviously, if they said no, that would be reported that the three of us would prefer a certain business model, and they don't. And then I suppose at some point the focus of that business model would either die, or it would become the topic of their election of the other 8 members when the investor councils gets together, and I don't think they've quite designed how they're going to actually do their own elections yet, but that's one of the things we have put into the transparency report, that, you know, as time goes on, there may be enough of those 8 that decide that, no, this would be a good idea. And as far as the additional funding, I mean, you know, the bottom line is I recognize that GPED has significant debt, and that a significant portion of the $500,000 which comes from the city and the county goes to pay their debt service, and that they've lost the PACRO funding of about $100,000. So I see them as an organization that we want them to succeed. I certainly want them to succeed, and I see them, you know, over time in need of additional revenue. So, and I also know that in the budget a year ago, we had them at 300,000. So going up to 300,000, what isn't necessarily an unheard of idea. We were there a year ago, but I kind of get your point that if it doesn't actually increase our voice, but I don't necessarily think this is about making sure we have control. That the McCracken County Fiscal Court has control of GPED. That's not what it's about. It's about the fact that I think the perception of the public is that city commissioners and county commissioners have something to do with economic development. And if we're not involved, then it's hard to have something to do with it. Now, I will say this, please know, and I want the public to know, you have been very good about sharing information, and this is by no means my belief that you're not doing what you're supposed to do. I think you do a great job of representing us on GPED. This is policy, long term, looking down the road for the next 20 years. If we were starting over to form a government-private organization, would we do it this way or that way? And I believe if we were starting over, we would do it the way we're talking about, and I think this is a good time to try and have that conversation. If they say no, they say no, and that'll be the report.
And then we go from there. We have to then debate what happens after that. We don't know what would happen.
Well, we're, I don't know, what are we, a month, 6 weeks or whatever behind on paying them their quarterly. Is this motion include that we don't pay them until they concede, or is it?
I think we have to have an agreement before we give them any money.
Okay, so they've got to agree to this, or we don't pay them.
Yeah, if they don't agree to this, then we go back to the.
Well, I don't think that's it. Number one, if I'm somehow, I'm not under the perception that there's not enough money to pay Bruce, Nora, or Heather. And I don't want to put anybody in a position where they're worried about their paycheck. My perception is that there's a bank balance big enough to cover the expenses. And I guess, I mean, if we're going to be heard, it doesn't seem like very good negotiation to say, well, here's your money, and here's some suggestions that we know you don't like. We hope you'll consider it. Frankly, I don't know that I could name all 8 members of GPED. You probably can, but I don't know that any of the 3 of us could.
I'll get them for you.
I think the cash issue was I think that was an issue we needed to consider, because we wouldn't want them to have to lay people off or defer paying bills. But I went through their tax returns, which are available on the internet, and at the end of 2017, which is the latest they had $699,555 cash on hand, so making payments for a few months is not going to be an issue.
Well, I'm pretty sure all our payments go to debt service. We're not sustaining their operations. But where do you get around the idea, or maybe you just think that's not right, that this body speaks with one voice, and that the potential downside is if you got two people from this body, that it may not be a polar opposite, it may not be a 180. Mr. Bartleman thinks he wants to vote yes as to one thing that's before GPED, and I want to vote no. Now, where's the fiscal court on that? What do we say about that? We're now splintered and divided, and it doesn't represent a majority of this board. What do you do with that?
I think that's part of a representative organization where people have different viewpoints and can vote the way they want. There's probably not going to be a whole lot of disagreement on issues, but again, it's having the extra commissioners a voice to ask questions and help with the accountability effort of it, because we as commissioners, and the perspective we come from, the same as you come from as a judge, is we may ask questions that they may not think of because we're in a different position with the public than what they are. They don't have to answer to the public like we do. So I think the more voices we can have, and I'm like you, whatever the final decision is, as a board member, I would support it and wouldn't necessarily criticize it, but I think we all have an obligation to bring up different viewpoints. On a board like this, I mean, if a commissioner and a judge don't agree on something, I think that it's good to have the different viewpoints raised and debated and discussed so that the entire board can consider those.
I agree wholeheartedly with that last thing you said, but that is contrary to the proposal that we're going to have two voices on the GPED board in my mind, because yes, we decide here by a majority vote what this body's thoughts are, what we want to do, what action we want to take, not take, whatever. And so we are unified and not divided. But if we go out into the community, not just GPED, we can go out in the community, talk to the Rotary here, talk to a group, go to Frankfurt, talk to the Economic Development Council. And if I say one thing and a commissioner says another thing, economic development folks are going to say, what's going on down there in McCracken County? I think, do they not know that this is a body? This is one voice, four of us, one voice, determined by a majority. And I think it sends a bad message. I think this whole thing is really, I'm not getting personal about it. I just think it's in direct conflict with how this organization, this body is intended to run, just like every other. And I think it sends a bad message. I also think that it's, I guess what you do about nothing really, because I think that if you, in one of these meetings, or if one of you individually, or two of you could call, no, two of you couldn't, that'd be the third, but one of you individually says, hey, would you ask GPED whatever? And I'll say, sure will, and I'll tell you what their answer is. And so I've got a $250,000 voice. If it's me and you, we've got a $250,000 voice, and it needs to be a unified voice. The argument that another voice is a win, I think, does not bear out when you break it down and dissect it and flesh it out. I just really don't. But y'all think otherwise? You've got a majority apparently. I still don't know where we are on the 50.
I'm not in favor of giving Pat any more money. I mean, we're sitting here talking about hiring human resources, and we've got a tight budget. I'm not in favor of another $50,000.
I guess in response to that we somehow operate as one voice, and I guess I do have a different philosophical view of that. I believe that we literally spend thousands of dollars by the time you figure the cost of the campaign, not just the cost of the campaigns, but just the cost of having the elections, and we elect 9 public officials, and then somehow say that those 9 are not necessarily somebody that the public would expect to participate in a board.
City and county joint.
City and county jointly, and I will tell you, I don't call any names, but I have talked to city commissioners, and I think there is interest. I think there are city commissioners that share this same mild frustration and interest in this business model change. I believe, I don't know for certain, but I know there have been boards in the past where the mayor and the city manager both serve on the board, or the deputy judge and the judge serve. I don't think that it necessarily somehow shakes the foundation of the fiscal court that if there was a commissioner and the judge executive on a 12-person board and they were able to have a different view and respectfully offer their views, I don't think they would be necessarily in that role deciding those issues, which would be different than our agenda issues, that they would somehow be compelled that they have to agree. And I don't think it would shake the foundation of our organization if they didn't agree. I think sometimes healthy, respectful disagreement is how we make progress.
I think it would be wrong if there was a debate in the meeting that the judge and the commissioner disagreed. They had debate in the meeting, and then the board voted a certain way. If they went to Frankfurt, it would be wrong for that commissioner, once the vote was taken, to come out and condemn what was done or disagree with what was done. I think once the decision was made, we had an issue a couple of years ago of spending, approving a new bond issue to put a full-service kitchen in the convention center. I personally disagreed with that. I voted against it as a commissioner, but it was approved by the fiscal court, and I'm a member of the convention center board. When I went to the convention center board, I supported it because that's what the commission did, and I think that was the right thing to do. Again, I personally disagreed with it, but the fiscal court as a whole approved the bond issue, and when I went to as a member of the convention center commission, I supported what the fiscal court did, because I think that's the right thing to do. And that would be the right thing to do here. If there was a disagreement on the board and the commissioner maybe disagreed with what the board's decision was, and they had to go to Frankfurt to make a case for something, it would be wrong for the commissioner to make that trip and speak against it. I think once the decision is made by the board, they support what the board has done. And if they can't support it, then they keep quiet.
But that argument makes my point, not yours, because you disagreed with what the fiscal court decided, but since it's the fiscal court, you delivered that message. You delivered the majority voice instead of your own.
But it was okay to have the input on the fiscal court meeting to debate it.
Sure it is.
And it'd be the same way there, to get on there, and it would be right for them to get in and debate the issue on the board, and if they had an opposing view, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's what they're supposed to do on the board. And
so it would have been okay for you to have said fiscal court voted to do the kitchen, but I say as a member of this convention center board that I'm against that.
No, but I had my voice on the fiscal court and debated the issues. They could have voted the other way. That's the same way on that board. If somebody has a disagreement, they might raise issues, and there might be some changes made because of the issues they raise. And then there's nothing wrong with having an opposing view when it's debated, but again, once the decision is made, I think there's an obligation to support what the decision as the group makes that you're part of. I don't think that's...
well, I've told you, I think it's just fundamentally, foundationally wrong. That's my opinion. You gentlemen think otherwise, and so it looks like I think we do need, and I don't know if you want to discuss it more, but we need to
I
get,
just had one final thing.
Okay.
What I want to say, this is why I think the 10 members of the present GPED board should say, you know what, we should do this. Because if they do this and we look forward 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, it will end the discussion forever of, well, should we hire our own? Should we part this? We will basically be making the partnership between private investment and city and county even stronger. And I think it will end the discussion of, well, should we do something else? I think, no, we will actually make a stronger commitment to this. And if I were on the GPED board, I would feel better about my county agreement and the county partnership.
well, I certainly respect your viewpoint, but I just think it's just wrong. And I don't think there'll be another voice. I don't think there'll be any more voice by there being 2 or 3 or 5 commissioners, because, again, the foundational aspect of this board is we speak with one voice. And as a practical matter, you guys, you tell me you want to know this or you want to know that. I go to the board and say, hey, I want to know this or that. And unless they have some confidential reason or anything, I guess the bottom line is I don't think we get no more information or no more, weight on the GPED board with 2 members than we do with 1, because we are one body and we're $250,000.
Would you agree with me that you have no legal obligation to tell us? I mean, you do that because you're a good leader, but if your position was held by a judge executive who didn't want to share with the commissioner, he wouldn't have to.
I'm
And
a
that probably has
representative of the
existed in the
fiscal
past.
court. I'm the judge executive. That's part of my duties. I could abdicate those duties and just say, hey, I'm not telling you guys anything. But I think that's a stretch. And so what is the motion? Is it 50,000?
I guess I would propose that we authorize you to sign and to negotiate the revised agreement that we've submitted, that I guess we can attach that to the order. It has, I guess, 4 different amendments. One, adding a commissioner to a 12-member board, or to a board that has no more than 12. So we're anticipating that the city may want to do this as well. And it adds the Section 9 transparency and community reports. So we can attach this to the record as I would move that we authorize you to sign and negotiate this revised agreement.
But there's not 50,000.
There's not. There's not. Yeah. There's not additional money in this agreement.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
And it could be the board decides they want to give us one of the 10 seats. Rather than add a seat, they could give us one of the 8 remaining seats.
So this, you're pointing to this section 3A.
Yeah, I tried to bold all the places that there was a revision.
And section 9.
Section 9, and I think there was.
There's one in section number 3 and section 6 that said annual GPED shall disclose the annual budget with actual revenue expenditures and annual comparisons to the McCracken Fiscal Court. That's in section 6, number 3.
And then.
What's that mean? Annual comparisons? What's that mean?
There may be a better way to say that, but that's actually showing basically what our income was last year, income this year.
Oh, I see.
There probably is there's probably a more accurate accounting phrase for that.
So the motion is for me to sign and negotiate with GPED.
I don't think we need the word negotiate in there, Commissioner Jones.
Can I read the order and see if this is what y'all want? As far as, okay.
Well, before you do that, can I ask Commissioner Jones something? We don't want the word negotiated,
You're right.
do we?
I agree with you.
we don't need the word negotiate, that we just authorize the judge to sign this revised agreement that was presented tonight. Is that's what my second was.
I think that's right.
Okay, so the motion is to authorize County Judge Executive Clymer to enter into a revised service agreement with the Greater Paducah Economic Development.
Yes.
Does that sound?
Except we don't have one now, so it would be revised.
Well, I guess it's revised from the proposed that was in the order.
Okay.
You want to add the word proposed revised?
Well, I guess it's just a service agreement with this bold language
Right.
and this, including all those requirements.
Right.
On all that,
Yes.
okay? Okay?
I think so.
I don't know if you have, do you have that?
We'll give this to.
I don't have that, but
Yeah, there's, I don't know, a couple hundred words or so in there, but, all right, any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. I'm a no. And so the motion carries. All right, that's on the service agreement. Let's see, let me get that. I'll need to hold on to that. Let's see. Where are we here? Now, we've got, it is ordered that 62.5 to be paid to the Greater Paducah Economic Development, same being the second quarter budget allocation for fiscal year 2019-20.
I move that we amend that order and get contingent upon GPEDC signing the service agreement. I amend that to add that phrase to it, that the money, they'll get the money if they sign the service agreement.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all right. Any discussion on that?
I was under the understanding we weren't gonna hold the money over their head.
The what, I'm sorry?
But we can't pay them without a
I
contract.
understand that, but I don't wanna word it like that. I mean, we're just,
They don't get the money unless we have an agreement.
It's $62,500. If they sign it, they get nothing, and I don't know what we do in the future. So in the future, might we relent and say, hey, we're gonna go ahead and give you the 62.5 even though we don't have two horses, or are we gonna shut them down and we do our own thing?
Well, given their balance, I don't think we're gonna shut them down, but we
They had $700,000 in the bank at the end of 2017. So I'm sure if they're in such tight financial condition, they can't pay their bills without this. We got other problems we need to look at.
we meet every 2 weeks.
we meet December the
December, you only meet
Well, how's the,
16th. Right.
what's the negotiation tactic that would be accomplished by in 2 weeks or in 12 months or in 6 years? We say, well, okay, looks like we're not going to get the seat, so let's pay them the now, I don't know, $6 million we owe them. Or
I guess that's where I'm going. I don't want to see us come up with a big amount. A month, 2 months, 3 months down the road, or 2 or 3 quarters down the road. It won't be a month, but I mean, we're already 62.5 in the hole. And how many weeks is it for?
1st of January is when.
1st of January, we're at 125. It's like a snowball. So
I'm forced to think it's unwise to do this, but anyway, I just don't think they're going to do it. And so
let's just table this.
I guess it'll be
I think we're sending the wrong
be whatever it's
message.
going to be.
Can I ask you to make another motion? Let's table the 62.5. I don't want to hold that over their head. No. I mean, it just sends the wrong message.
Well, and I guess I've publicly said I'm not in favor of unfunding GPAD, but I guess it just, I don't want everybody making fun of me tomorrow when I propose it
change to the contract and give them the check at the same time, and just, nobody will hire me as a lawyer if I do that.
If you want to make a motion to table, you can.
So, do you make a motion to
Jeff
table?
made a motion.
I'd like to make a
I'll
motion
second
to
his
table
motion,
the
Dave.
62.5 until the
So
December.
just table, the motion then is to table this
Table,
ordinance of
right,
paying them 62.5.
right.
Okay,
That way,
if we're gonna do
they
that-
won't know why we're doing it.
They're probably not.
It'll just be a mystery.
I mean, I don't mind amending it, but, I mean, if somebody wants to table it, I don't mind amending it to put a caveat on there that we have to have a signed agreement. What is it the President Trump
Well-
calls that?
What he calls it, but anyway.
You got some input on this, Mr. Doolittle?
Yes, since it is not nearly confused enough. So the purpose of this other order was because in the first quarter, we discussed the agreement, we couldn't come to a resolution, but you decided to pay them. So we had an order for that. The second order isn't really needed because it's contemplated inside the agreement. If the agreement gets executed, we won't come back with future orders.
Right.
The treasurer will just pay them quarterly per the agreement. So we won't come back every quarter with, do we pay them again, do we pay them again? If there's sign off, if there's a meeting of the mind of both parties on the agreement, then we will pay them for their second quarter, and then in January we'll get caught back up. So I don't even really think you need this second quarter, this at all, because the motion you passed related to the order before this contemplates how we're going to pay them.
Cool.
Agreed. Cool.
We need a motion to withdraw this.
I'll make a motion to withdraw, B, under section 5 old business.
I'll
Make
second.
a motion to withdraw what?
The order.
The order B, under section 5 of old business.
I'll second. Apparently I'll second either.
Any discussion on that? So the A was for me to sign and present it to GPED to sign. And if they don't sign it, then we don't have this 62.5 to be paid to
That's
them.
correct.
That's right. But if they do sign it, they get this 62.5 and the next 62.5 and the third 62.5.
Yeah.
After they give us their quarterly report.
That's right. Yeah, they got to comply with the section 9.
I think you're correct. We don't need that one because if they sign the agreement, they've earned the money.
They'd have to comply with the agreement of section 9.
Let me ask, procedurally, do we have to, though, for example, with the Humane Society, we have a contract with the Humane Society, and we approve their funding every month. Do we have to do that?
I don't think so.
And it's the same way with this one. I mean, it's,
We have an annual contract, and the amount is set. There's nothing left to negotiate at that point.
it's an annual contract, it's budgeted, and we probably don't have to do that. And I've always wondered about that with the Humane Society, why we had to.
Did we vote?
We have other organizations, that we give, what, $2,300 to every month, and what's the
Conservation.
conservation? I mean, do we have to approve that every month?
There's no contract with them, is there?
No contract, right?
We probably need a contract with them, don't we?
Too, somehow calculated different.
Okay.
It's statutory, but the amount's not set statutory.
No, because over the years, that amount has changed.
Let's look into that one too. While we won't worry about that one tonight.
So I just, we're on discussion on this, but, you know, the idea that, and I think, of course, Steve's correct, that if they sign this agreement, then we don't need the 62.5, and obviously the desire here is to not pay them the 62.5 until they sign it. And so what if they don't sign it
It'll be back on our agenda again.
with that same ordinance to pay them
If they don't,
62.5? That's the flip side.
If they don't sign it, where are we at?
Well, I just want to point out just quickly that, we talk about being transparent and not playing games, and I think what would you have to be, 6-year-old to understand that what we're doing is not paying them $62.5 because they don't sign our agreement.
It's true, and I guess at the same time, this is the only way that I guess we can communicate to GPAD that 3 out of 4 members of this fiscal court feel like this is a good idea. And I don't come to this lightly. I come to it after knocking on a lot of doors and hearing from people in the community. And if they say no, I guess I've already said, I'm not interested in a plan that somehow pulls us out of this partnership. But I feel compelled to give them my voice.
Well, I think there's also an aspect, and I'm just going to vote against this as well, because I think that this 62.5 has been owed for some time. I guess, are we into the second? We're not into the second quarter. We're into the second quarter. So actually, we're 2 quarters behind. We're $125,000.
We'll be here about 6 weeks.
We did pay the first quarter.
Oh, we paid the first.
Yes, we did. And
Okay.
this is for the second quarter that would have started in October.
Okay. So we're not paying them money that would have been paid before, and it was due, what, July? No, this was due
We would have
October.
Paid them after the first meeting in October.
Yeah, so this money, as it was in October, should have been paid then, the 62.5. But now, the latter part of November, we're saying because they won't do this new agreement, we're not going to pay them the 62.5 that we owed them in October.
I think from a technical standpoint, there has been no agreement. We've concluded that we can't make any further payments until there is agreement. We've been waiting for this moment to negotiate with them the agreement. Before they made their revisions to their business model back a year ago, they met with us. We told them what we thought. They didn't put a county commissioner on the board, so we've been kind of waiting for this moment to make that expression to them. It's not owed because we haven't signed the contract. It's not overdue because we're not obligated to pay it. It is in the budget, and nobody's making a motion to amend the budget and take it out of the budget.
Right. Any other discussion?
I would just hope that they seriously understand that we're serious about what we're, our view on this, that at least 3 of us want a seat on the board to communicate and to help with transparency. I don't think it'll be a problem. I think we have that, but I would hope that they would be willing to take a serious look at it. The chairman of the board said he didn't think this was an issue, but maybe now this will be communicated to them that it is an issue that we're very concerned about, and that we want to help and be a part of it. We don't want to be a distraction, as some people have indicated. We want to make it work and work better. And again, it's our responsibility as elected officials to be accountable for $250,000 that we give them every year. So,
Okay. So the order as it's written there is sufficient? That's the motion?
Yes.
yeah, we need to.
It is ordered that 62, I'm sorry. Yeah, so that's what we're voting on. It is ordered that 62.5 be paid to the greater.
Well, I think the motion right now is to
Motion
withdraw
is to
it.
withdraw that order.
Yeah, okay.
It's been made in second, right?
Yes.
All right. All in favor, aye, to
Aye.
withdraw
Aye.
that order. Opposed, I vote no. All right, that carries to withdraw that order. All right, and then we got court orders that were not on the consent agenda. It's ordered to approve the McCracken County. You're
Ready?
supposed to be, yeah, you.
Ready now?
I'm kind of on a roll here. but
Okay, all right.
put you on
If you
the-
want to read them, go right ahead.
I don't
But
want-
this first one's a dilly here.
I don't want to.
It is ordered to approve the McCracken County Clerk's Office 2019 budget amendments. On page 2, line 21, delinquent taxes, the original amount was $1,790,375. The amendment adds $68,225 for a total amended amount of $1,858,600. Page 5, line 59 is refunds. The original amount was $915,875, and the amendment is $98,325 for a total of $1,014,200.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
So this is good news.
What'd you say?
This is good news or bad news?
Well, it means we have more refunds than
Except for the
anticipated,
refund.
basically is what happened. We collected it and then we had to refund it back, sorry.
And your
Oh, I see.
delinquent went up, so that's
I see.
bad news.
So it's bad news.
Yeah.
Bad news is $30,000 bad news.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other
It
discussion?
happens.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That carries.
It is ordered that a bid opening was held at 10 a.m. on November the 18th, 2019 at the Judge Executive's office for 2 light-duty 4x4 half-ton crew cab pickup trucks, one for the road department and one for the building and electric. 2 bids were received from Linwood Chrysler Dodge and Paducah Ford. Both bids were taken under advisement.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye. Opposed, no. That carries.
It is ordered that the bid from Linwood Chrysler Dodge for 2 light truck 4x4 half-ton crew cab pickup trucks, 2019 Classic Dodge Ram 1500 4x4 crew cabs, one for the road department and one for the building and electric is accepted.
So made.
How much?
I'll second it.
Have that here.
This is 24 and some
Yeah,
change.
24,433.
For each one?
For each one.
You hadn't bought a truck lately.
We get good deals.
You never know.
Not that good.
It's a pretty good deal.
It's not a model truck.
Somebody told me one time they wanted to buy a $10,000 truck and they couldn't find one. And I said, you can find one, you just got to pay $15,000 for it.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carries.
It is ordered that the treasurer is authorized to cancel the current credit card with Bank of America and apply for a new credit card with U.S. Bank.
So made.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carries.
It is ordered that the treasurer is authorized to execute the on-site service agreement with health and wellness professionals for biometric screening events.
So made.
Second.
Can you explain what that is?
Actually, our Humana covers the cost of doing this. We just have to pay for the travel of this company. And I think it's right at $100 every time we send them to a site.
So they go and they sit up for a day or two and then they,
Exactly.
you know, it costs us $100.
Yeah, it's really good investment because the insurance actually covers the bigger costs. So that's doing the draw and the lab work. And this all feeds into with Humana that if I think it's 40% of our employees that are in the health plan earn enough wellness credits, and this is a significant part of it, getting their biometrics done, we can be eligible for a 4% discount on our premium. We have to have that done in 9 months, so it's a 4% of a couple $1 million is a lot of money. So
Do we get good participation in these type of programs usually?
we get better participation when we come to the job site or the work sites and actually do the biometric screening there.
We
Then say,
need to
go to
really
your doctor
push to
and get
get that. I mean, that's what, $80,000 for 4%.
Yeah, there's a wellness committee that's made up of all of the larger departments, and they have been meeting actively and working on the strategy to see that happens.
Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carries.
It is ordered that the county judge executive and the treasurer are authorized to execute any documents requiring to complete the purchase of the Monroe property by McCracken County, including the deed of conveyance, and to pay the purchase price and closing costs not to exceed $102,000.
So made.
Second.
Second.
This is paid with payroll funds, right?
Yes.
And is it,
I don't think the 102 would he have a separate for the demolition, or are we handling this all?
So the PACRO application was for 112, so we can pay cleanup costs and other things that are associated with the acquisition. The actual purchase price is a little less than this. I said up to 102 because by the time they settle taxes and everything else, it's what you actually write the check for is never what the purchase price was for. So I asked Denton, someone at Denton, to give us a number not to exceed. I thought that was a safe number. So we'll likely write a check less than this amount.
so I understand the contract for this purchase was negotiated by GPED.
Yes, it was.
And was actually with GPED. Is there any, I think one of our stipulations was that the property be titled in the county
It'll
rather
be
than GPED.
titled in McCracken County. Yep.
Okay.
We will be the purchaser.
Then later on, are we going to approve the money for cleanup?
Yes, we've already done a little bit of cleanup that we will reimburse ourselves that we've already done. And we have a $4,500 contract or $4,300 contract pending with a contractor to go in there and clean up the rest. And then my expectation is the owner and the tenants will leave more behind than we actually anticipate, and so it'll probably be a couple more cleanups after the one that we have pending.
Any of this acreage farmable? I mean, there's just,
No, it's all kind of an old farm site. Not without clearing and doing all that.
More discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
It is ordered that the following deputy jailers will receive $300 less statutory deductions for passing the fiscal incentive test. And they are listed there.
So made.
Second.
Can we have an explanation of this? I've never seen this before. Where'd this come from?
When we did our budget meetings, we went over this. This used to be our hiring incentive, which didn't work out, and we decided to do this physical fitness incentive, and that stayed in the same line item. So we did away with a hiring incentive, which we don't have anymore, and this is
Just like an Army PT test?
not quite as hard, but it is an incentive for them to stay in shape, yes.
Do we give other employees the same incentive?
In the sheriff's department, this is
Did the fiscal court approve those?
yes, it's in their pay ordinance.
All right.
I hear they're working on one for commissioners, Commissioner Martin.
Yeah.
I completely support this because for no reason, workers' comp and injury prevention. This little dab will go a long ways in helping us with our client history.
I'm not opposed to it. I just didn't, I never saw that before. I didn't know we were doing that.
This is the first year we've ever done
All
it.
right, so you give the test once a year?
And they have to be off probation before they can take this test. We run them through a hiring test to make sure they're not disabled.
Like this ought to be a $75 quarterly test.
We could split it up.
We'll talk about
different
that
ways.
in the budget next time.
It's an annual thing. I mean, they have to pass it every year or they lose it, I guess.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, not everybody took it, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't see your name on there. Did you take it?
I wasn't going to take this. But it's not that hard. I could do it.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Then resolutions, I don't think we have any resolutions. Nothing for executive session, none aware of. And a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We're adjourned.